Begin here in this moment. Feel the simple, undeniable reality of your physical presence. Notice the subtle weight of your body, the gentle pressure against the surface that holds you. Become aware of the air as it enters, a cool stream passing through your nostrils, and the warmth of its departure. This breath is an anchor, a silent rhythm that has accompanied you since your first second of life, asking for nothing. It is a tide, rising and falling in the vast, quiet ocean of your being. Listen, not just with your ears, but with your entire sensory field. What sounds are present in the room? The low hum of a distant machine, the whisper of wind, the faint creak of a floorboard. Do not name them. Simply allow the vibrations to be what they are, raw data arriving at the shore of your awareness without a story attached. In this space of pure sensation, a question may arise, unbidden. Who is this that is aware? Who is the silent witness to this breath, to these sounds, to this feeling of being alive? There is the story of you, a name, a history, a collection of memories and future ambitions that you carry like a well-worn coat. And then there is this silent, watching presence. The two seem to occupy the same space, yet they are not the same. One is a construction of time, a narrative woven from past and future. The other is timeless, existing only in the eternal now. The friction between these two realities is the starting point of every profound journey. It is a quiet invitation, a doorway that has always been here, waiting for you to notice the key is already in your hand. The decision is not whether to walk through it, but whether to finally acknowledge its existence. Recall, if you can, the world before words gave it shape. A kaleidoscope of raw sensation. The startling green of a blade of grass against your tiny fingers. The bewildering warmth of sunlight on your skin. The terrifying boom of a slammed door, a vibration that shook your entire universe. In that pre-verbal kingdom, you were not a separate self negotiating with reality. You were reality itself, an undivided current of experience. There was no mask, for there was no audience. There was no performance, for there was no stage. Hunger was a fire in the belly, not a social inconvenience. Joy was an explosion of sound and motion, not something to be tempered for the sake of decorum. Rage was a thunderstorm, powerful and pure, passing as quickly as it arrived. This was your original nature, a state of unfragmented being. Then, the world began to teach you its rules. A sharp intake of a parent's breath when you spoke a truth too raw for the dinner table. A subtle frown of disapproval when your sadness was too loud, too messy. The rewarding smile when you performed the expected role, the good child. You were a brilliant student of these unwritten laws. You learned, with the astonishing adaptive intelligence of a young organism, that certain parts of your authentic experience were welcome, while others were liabilities. These unwelcome parts, the inconvenient anger, the grasping neediness, the wild creativity, the uninhibited joy, were not destroyed. They could not be. They were simply gathered up, one by one, and carried down into the silent, dark cellar of the psyche. Out of necessity, you began the great work of construction. You became an artisan, a sculptor of a more acceptable self. With the clay of social expectation and the tools of praise and punishment, you crafted a persona. This was not a malicious act, it was a masterpiece of survival. This mask was your ambassador to the world, a functional and often beautiful interface designed to navigate the complex terrain of family, school, and society. It knew how to please, how to achieve, how to be liked, how to be safe. A young boy, sensitive and deeply feeling, observes his stoic father who never shows weakness. He learns that tears are a source of shame. So he takes his sensitivity, this immense capacity for empathy, and locks it away. In its place, he forges a shield of detached competence, an armor of analytical coolness that wins him praise for being strong and reliable. He becomes a celebrated problem solver, a man of action, but the wellspring of his deepest feeling has been capped and sealed over. The original, vibrant totality of your being was partitioned. You became an editor of your own existence, highlighting the acceptable chapters and redacting the rest. This edited version became your identity, the story you told yourself and the world. You polished it, refined it, and defended it with immense, often unconscious effort. And for a time it worked. The world responded to the carefully constructed image, and the rewards came: approval, success, a sense of belonging. The disowned aspects, those exiles in the psychic basement, remained quiet for a while, their muffled cries unheard beneath the busy noise of a successful life. But maintaining a fortress is an exhausting enterprise. The sheer psychic energy required to constantly monitor, edit, and perform the role of the persona as a quiet, relentless drain on your life force. It is the low-grade hum of anxiety in a quiet moment. It is the inexplicable fatigue that settles in your bones even after a full night's sleep. It is the subtle, gnawing sense that you are an imposter in your own life, a fraudulent actor who fears being exposed. You may not even notice it consciously for years, this slow leak of vitality. It becomes the background noise of your existence. The body, however, keeps an honest score. It manifests this internal division as a tension in the jaw, a tightness in the shoulders, a shallow, constricted breath that never quite reaches the depths of your belly. These are not medical symptoms to be cured. They are sacred messages from the disowned self, hieroglyphs of suffering etched into your very flesh. You find yourself striving with ever-increasing intensity, chasing the next achievement, the next promotion, the next relationship, believing it will finally silence the disquiet within. Yet each victory feels hollow, the satisfaction fleeting. The polished surface of the persona begins to show hairline cracks. A flash of irrational anger at a minor inconvenience. A wave of profound sadness that washes over you while watching a simple movie. A cynical bitterness that laces your humor. These are not random moods, they are tremors from the cellar. The exiled parts of you are rattling the door, their energy growing in proportion to the force of their suppression. A woman who built her identity on being the selfless caregiver, the one who always says yes, finds herself one afternoon standing in her kitchen, paralyzed. Her family is making its usual demands, but for the first time, she feels an unfamiliar, terrifying wave of pure rage. It is the accumulated fury of 1,000 unvoiced no's, 1,000 unmet needs. She feels it as a sickness, a foreign invader, because it does not fit the story of who she is. She pushes it down, horrified, and redoubles her efforts to be kind, to be giving, all the while a toxic resentment begins to curdle beneath the surface. This is the great lie of the constructed self, the belief that if you just perfect the mask, you will achieve a state of permanent peace. The opposite is true. The more perfect the facade, the greater the tension, the deeper the division, and the more profound the suffering. An unasked question begins to form in the silence of your being, a question that the persona cannot answer. Is this all there is? This endless cycle of striving and anxiety, of performance and exhaustion? The question itself is a sign that the old structure is becoming unstable. It is the first gust of wind against a house of cards, a signal that a necessary storm is gathering on the horizon. The discomfort is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are beginning to awaken. The moment of reckoning often arrives not as a gentle dawn, but as a violent storm. It could be a failure, a betrayal, a loss so profound that the foundations of your constructed world crumble. The carefully curated identity, the reliable mask you have worn for decades, shatters. In the terrifying space that opens up, you are left with nothing but the raw, unfiltered truth of your own being. And from the cellar of your psyche, the door is no longer rattled, it is kicked open. The shadow emerges. It is not an evil entity from outside of you. It is everything you ever decided you were not. It is the accumulated rage of a lifetime of suppressed boundaries. It is the ravenous greed for life and experience that you shamed into hiding. It is the profound, cowering shame you felt as a child, now projected outward as harsh judgment of others. It is the untamed sexuality, the savage creativity, the unacceptable parts you were taught to despise. To meet this is terrifying. It feels like a possession. The nice person is suddenly consumed by thoughts of venomous hatred. The disciplined individual is swept away by an impulse for self-destruction. The humble servant is confronted with a megalomaniacal desire for power and recognition. Your first instinct is the one you have practiced your entire life. To fight it, to deny it, to push it back down into the darkness. You wrestle with this perceived monster, trying to reassemble the shattered pieces of your old, good self. But this wrestling is the very source of the agony. It is a civil war that can never be won, for you are fighting a part of your own wholeness. The energy of the shadow is your own life energy, inverted and distorted by repression. A man who prided himself on his unflappable calm and rationality loses his job. The persona of the competent provider is obliterated. In its wake comes not a noble sadness, but a terrifying, volcanic rage directed at his former boss, his family, the world, and most of all himself. He is horrified by the murderous intensity of his own thoughts. This is not him. Yet, the more he tries to suppress this fury, the more it consumes him, manifesting as debilitating depression and physical illness. The great turning point, the act of supreme intellectual and spiritual courage, is to stop fighting. It is to turn, in the midst of the inner chaos, and look directly at the face of the beast. To ask it not, how can I destroy you? But rather, what have you come to teach me? In that moment of radical acceptance, a profound paradox is revealed. Within the heart of the terrifying rage lies a fierce, protective energy, a guardian of boundaries that were never defended. Within the grasping greed is a tremendous, throttled passion for life, a hunger for authentic experience. Within the deep well of shame is a profound sensitivity and a doorway to unconditional compassion for yourself and others. The shadow is not your enemy. It is the keeper of the gold you have disowned. It is the raw, untamed earth of your full humanity. The descent into this underworld is not a fall from grace, it is a homecoming. You are not meant to defeat the shadow. You are meant to integrate it, to bring its raw, powerful energy back into the light of conscious awareness, where it can be transformed from a destructive monster into a potent ally. This is the hero's journey, not played out on some mythical battlefield, but in the silent, terrifying, and ultimately liberating depths of your own soul. This act of turning toward, of ceasing the war, precipitates a dissolution. It is a letting go of the most fundamental kind. The identity you thought was you, the lifelong project of self-construction, begins to dissolve like a sandcastle in the returning tide. This is not an intellectual process of understanding. It is a visceral, somatic experience of release. The tension held for decades in the muscles begins to unwind. The breath, for so long a shallow prisoner in the upper chest, spontaneously deepens, descending into the belly, reclaiming its natural, grounding rhythm. A space opens up. At first, this emptiness can feel like a death, and in a way it is. It is the death of the illusion of the separate, struggling self. It is the ego's frantic terror in the face of its own irrelevance. But if you can stay with this emptiness, without rushing to fill it with a new story or a new identity, it reveals its true nature. It is not a void of non-existence. It is the plenum, the fertile ground of pure potentiality. It is the vast, silent awareness in which all things, thoughts, feelings, sensations, the persona, the shadow, arise and pass away like clouds in an infinite sky. You are not the clouds. You have never been the clouds. You are the sky. This realization is the core of awakening. You see that the good parts and the bad parts were never truly separate. They were simply different expressions of the same life force, judged and divided by a mind conditioned by fear. The rage becomes the fuel for courageous action. The fear becomes a teacher of profound presence. The sadness becomes a well of deep compassion. The energy once squandered on repression is now liberated, available for creative, authentic living. This is integration. It is not about becoming a perfect, sanitized version of yourself. It is about becoming radically, unapologetically whole. It is the embrace of your own magnificent, messy, contradictory, and divine humanity. The authentic self is not a new, improved mask. It is the absence of any mask at all. It is the willingness to stand in the world as you are, in this moment, with all your light and all your darkness held in the compassionate embrace of awareness. The journey does not end here. In many ways, it has just begun. But the nature of the journey has changed. It is no longer a desperate struggle for survival or a frantic search for validation. It is a dance, an unfolding, a continuous discovery of the depth and mystery of what you are. The peace that arises is not the peace of a tranquilized mind or an anesthetized heart. It is a robust, dynamic peace, the peace of a great river that has finally found its way back to the ocean, merging its individual current with the boundless expanse from which it came. You are still here. The world is still here. But you are no longer a prisoner of your own story. You are the living presence that illuminates the page.